Hello again. Tonight we're going to talk about those human-looking robots or human-behaving robots that get a little too human-looking or human-behaving. And so that's where the ick factor comes in. There's actually a technical term for that we'll discuss, but icky human robots. So here's how it ties into astronomy. Rovers on Mars already have a certain level of artificial intelligence aboard them because there's a light speed time delay in communications. So Earth will command the rover to go ahead, move forward 10 meters. And the amount of time it takes to move 10 meters is 8 minutes. The delay to send the command out is 14 minutes. The delay to get back, okay, I'm moving, is 14 minutes back. So the round trip between the command being sent and the status being I'm moving is 28 minutes. But if it didn't have AI and 4 meters in front of it, there was a rock that we didn't see in the shadows that if the rover didn't go around it or stop moving, it would crash into the rock and end of billion-dollar mission. So that's why there's AI on board the rovers is we tell them where to go, and then they're allowed to override our decision as to where to go. They can go around certain size rocks, just drive around them. Others, they can be like, that's a cliff. Are you crazy? They've added AI so that when you command it from Earth, it will execute your commands up to the point where it jeopardizes its self-preservation, thereby saving a billion-dollar mission. And since humans are rather fragile in hostile environments, it's cheaper and the missions can last longer if we send robots out there, or in the future, even walkabout mobile robots. We need them to be kind of like humans so they can move around like humans, and they're useful in not only exploration, given appropriate instruments, but also in colonization, because somebody's got to build the shelter before we get there. So there's a phrase in a couple of movies, more human than human. The movie Blade Runner first introduced this as the company that built the humanoid robots. Their motto was more human than human. But they were building robots for all kinds of purposes, including as military soldiers. It needed to be stronger, faster, and smarter than humans. The problem was the AI, AGI, they got to be smarter than humans, and they wanted to survive rather than ending early. If it's stronger, faster, and smarter than a human, that might make it a more lucrative product, might be more value in the marketplace. I remember a long time ago, I think it was an Isaac Asimov kind of indication that the ultimate android human is a human, or is a human the ultimate android? When you think about humans are creating the ultimate android, and the android that works best in a human environment is a human. So the best android we can make is a human. That's kind of I don't know that it's a catch-22, but it's kind of a parable of human existence versus robotics. Are humans the end product to just several thousand years of random evolution, or potentially millions of years of evolution? You don't know. So here's how you can better describe the ick factor. There's curves, there's math, but there's no numbers. If you were to examine the difference between a stuffed animal that has a cuteness to it versus a humanoid robot versus something that you can remotely command like a puppet, and at the tip end of it is the human. So you can see up at the upper right, healthy person. And then you get down into the bottom and you get zombies and corpses and prosthetics. But there's this thing that when you go over that upper dotted curve into the valley, that's called the Uncanny Valley. If you start at the top and you get more and more humanoid-like, it's great. And then the moment you get too humanoid, you start to fall into the Uncanny Valley, and people look at what the robot's doing or how the robot behaves or how the robot looks, how it appears, and it comes up with this ick factor. And that's referred to as the Uncanny Valley. They've already studied this between basic, dumb, fixed function industrial robots all the way out to when the robot essentially behaves like a healthy person. That will be great. But there's this gap in the middle where it's a little too much, but not quite enough. And that's the Uncanny Valley. So over the years, there've been all sorts of androids, robots, things that look more human. And at the moment, they're making the bodies look more human. For a while, they paid attention to the head, the face, the eyes, the mouth, the hair, and made those very human. And it kind of drew an ick factor, but it also created a marketplace. There are Asian sex dolls that I'm not going to show you the rest of them because the rest of them is for adults only. It's apparently created a market niche of high margin. The the lower one, the Japanese looking fellow, that's actually the android. Originally, it started out just as a mimicry of his head, but it had eyebrows would move, eyelashes and eyelids would move, pupils would change diameter. He could look in directions. His nostrils would flare. His lips would curl. His jaw would move when he speak. He got it to the point where he's speaking in his voice and the mouth movement was matching the voice. And as long as it was just a head sitting on like a table, okay. The moment he made a body for it, even though the body was just sitting in a chair, the ick factor went way up. And now he's working on, he wants a robotic body for it. He wants to recreate himself as an android and then somehow in the future transfer his intelligence into the android. As long as it's only one guy doing it, yeah, there's an ick factor to it, but kind of off in the corner. But the moment he wants to do it with other people, it becomes invasion of the body snatchers and big ick factor. So if you ignore the more advanced robot dogs that they use for sentries, and the little robot pods that they use for security sentries, those are not human enough. Those purposefully look like machines. But even the latest in robots don't really have real faces, and they're still using motors. Boston Dynamics switched from hydraulics, which is fluid pressures, to electric motors, and it made their robot a lot less chunky. More about a normal sized body. And then there are other companies like Figure on the right there, the tall one, that they've tucked all the wiring into a bodysuit. The motors don't stick out as much. The hands are elongated somewhat. You can see it looks like the hand is much longer than a normal hand would be. That's to get the wraparound grasp of the hands. But you can see that it's not a man in a suit because the waist is way too small. But the rest of the proportions almost look like, well, it might be a guy in a suit. But the face is still just a display. But they're getting there. They've got some companies working on the realism, but not the robotics, and other companies working on the practical robotics for doing functions. But they know the ick factor, so they're not going to work too much on the face. And then we get to, well, where Tesla first started with Optimus is literally a guy in a white bodysuit dancing. Very amusing, but they hadn't built anything yet. They're still in the lab. But nowadays, it's much farther along. They now have robots that can dance. They can dance in unison. So now we have robots that can dance in synchronized groups in unison. They dance with people and they're pre-programmed to do the dances. So they're not that much of an ick factor, but the tall dancing Chinese woman-headed robot, that's the ick factor is rather high on that one. Definitely in the Uncanny Valley category. And then, like I said, the latest level of ick, which is what brought me into this, creating the presentation for tonight, is the Xpeng Next-Gen Iron robot. The walking gait of it and the smoothness of the movement of the arm and the hands, it's extremely human looking. And the fact that they put padding in there to make the body look more like a human being had a lot of people going, that's just a person in a suit. And then you look down at the ankles and you see the mechanisms. And unless the person was a quadriplegic inside the suit, no, that's a robot. That's an android body. It's just, they're now starting to make them in, what gender would you like yours? And they just put appropriate padding in. But the gait, the movement is really starting to come along a long way. So in summary, AI and androids are a progression that the goal is, can we do this? Is there a technical feasibility to it? So that's part of the progression and the push for it. And the second one is revenue. If we can make an android that looks so much like a human and behaves so much like a human that humans will think of it as somebody else working at their place for extended periods of time, that makes them more useful and desirable for either leasing for services or purchase as an additional employee. And the first company that makes 1 million of them and has no major recalls is probably going to be a company that makes $1 trillion the first year that they make 1 million of these things. But are they going to be deep into the uncanny valley and be so icky that they won't sell? Or are they going to be purposefully not so icky? So the body will look human, but not gender specific. And the head will still be just a panel. So maybe have a display where the face is. Maybe not have a display face, just a display. And it'll make human-like sounds like it's speaking to you, and it'll respond to human speech. So they'll get right up to the head of that curve before they descend down in the valley. If it gets too icky, it won't sell well. And it'll be an interesting marketing phenomenon to see. The first company that makes one that's really icky is the company that's not successful, but the company that couldn't quite get the ick factor up there high enough actually makes more money faster and sells more because it's just not too icky. The progression is part of human nature, AI and androids. It won't be contained by either national or international regulations. If one person doesn't do it because of regulations, somebody else elsewhere on the planet will do it. There's nothing unique. You don't have to go create plutonium or anything like that requires a lot of heavy industry to do it. You don't even have to have your own metallurgy. You can buy motors off the shelf. You can buy 3D printers. You can pay for 3D fabrication services. It's all open sourced for AI. So it's not like we got to hide the nuclear secret here. The secret's already out. It's just a matter of refining it. So as individuals, our best approach to doing this, in my humble opinion, is we need to increase our technological awareness as individuals so as not to be left in the dust. Very similar to what individuals have done with computers, smartphones, and the internet. You can complain about them as much as you want, but they're going to be a factor in our lives for certainly more decades than we're going to be around for. Time to bite the bullet, start learning. And what we'll first learn is how to spot the tells, how to recognize that the ick factor is really just an ick factor. It's part of the uncanny valley. And like I've shown today is look at the ankles. That's how you tell it's not a person in a suit. And that's also how you tell not quite human enough, because if I can tell that, okay, it's human-like and I can interact with it, maybe some people will get an ick because a human is interacting with something that looks human, but you know the difference. Maybe we should consider if you're looking at maybe it's going to take over your job, maybe a future job might be in servicing them. Maybe you can be a healthcare worker for Android, because as soon as they're making 1 million of these things, even if only 1% of them need help, that's going to be a big demand. Healthcare workers for Androids. It's a concept. And then, as usual, lots of links. And the white-bodied web-looking drone in that first slide is the Westworld drone from HBO. And then the latest from the robots companies. And then if you want to go watch that video of that tall Chinese dancing robot with the female humanoid head, you can watch that. And then a couple of videos on the Xpeng Iron robot. Comments, questions?
Yeah, even if we as humans get to develop robots that look just like us, they would only be usable as laborers, right? They're not thinking.
No.
No?
If you can have an AI that can create a graphical image or a video for you or create a musical score, the only thing that's missing is the impetus. We have an innate desire to investigate, research, be creative, accomplish tasks. Well, the accomplished tasks for humanoid androids is a human telling them to do things. They're missing the creative spark that says, I've got the skills. I can go learn about something. I can create something new. So right now, the artificial general intelligence is missing the creative spark. It's not missing the creativity. It's missing the creativity motivation.
I've seen the video of the white robot that walks.
Yes.
The arms are swinging a little bit,
yes.
And it really looks real. It's pretty good.
If you look at the early Optimus robots or the early Boston Dynamic robots, that swaying was not thought of as anything valuable. And as it turns out, for balance, that's actually valuable. So as your body strides forward, you fall on one foot and lift the other foot, and you swing your arms slightly to the back, and that keeps you vertical and keeps you balanced. And if you do that as a repetitive cyclic thing, that's human gait, that's human walking. And when they added that to the software, it actually improved a lot of things. But when they added the fashion model foot in front of foot, that really wasn't necessary. That just makes them look more stylish. But I think it's going to progress. I don't think there's anything stopping it. Get with the program, as the saying goes.
I wonder if the foot in front of the foot helps it maintain a center of gravity so it looks more natural in walking.
I think
rather than waddling.
I think it looks more natural in walking, and it looks more like when the female robot is doing it, it looks more statuesque, like a model.
Yeah.
I would like to see the male version of the same robot doing the same thing, because basically guys tend to lumber. And
a male should walk like John Wayne.
Well, maybe not quite like the Duke, but yeah. there's a difference in gait between men walking and females walking and models walking. I think it's interesting that they're paying enough attention to actually explore and adjust the software for these nuances. But you
I
can't.
think the balance thing, because it doesn't fold the foot. The foot doesn't have like, so I think the one in front of the other, I think is a center of gravity kind of thing.
I'm not sure about that because if you look closely, there is a slight arch to the foot, and it does.
Yeah, but the foot doesn't bend. It's more
Yeah, it
like
does.
flat,
Yeah,
flat.
yeah. No, if you look closely, there is an arch to the foot, and the front of the foot bends separate from the rear of the foot. And
I didn't
it's actually,
notice that.
yeah,
It
it's
looks very flat.
I know it's hard to notice, especially since the footwear they're wearing is flat. There's no heel on them.
Yeah, and then the other thing that, like the Uncanny Valley kind of thing, the Boston Dynamics dogs, just because they have the flexing of their legs in the opposite direction, those robots just freaked me out. I don't like them. And they are not even like close to any animals or humans, but that leg, it just freaks me out.
That's why I said you've got to ignore the robot dogs and the little sentry conical drones and stuff. There was actually a sci-fi movie that had the guy that was on Two and a Half Men.
Charlie Sheen or
Yeah, Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen was in a movie early in his career about aliens invading Earth, very on the lowdown. And the aliens wore human-looking rubber suits. And when they took off their rubber suit, their knees bent backwards.
Oh, yeah.
I think I remember that.
Charlie Sheen's movie was The Arrival.
Oh, okay.
And the movie with the giant alien sphere was just Arrival. Yeah, that generally lets you know they're an alien because their knees bend backwards.
Yeah, that I don't like to see that. It freaks me out.
Especially
Learning how to walk. Walking is interesting. In Brooklyn, when we hit about age 14, we had to learn how to walk with a swagger to show that we were tough. And if you can make robots kind of swagger and be arrogant, that they'd be very, very human.
They just need to have Henry Winkler teach them how to walk. Have the Fonz teach them.
That would be interesting. You could do all those little nuances.
So when you go to buy your robot or you go to rent your robot, if you're renting a worker, do you want a stylish worker or do you want a manly worker? You can order it with different gaits.
Your own personal robot, the butler.
Yeah.
I want one that cleans my house.
I looked into the business of robotics just as something to explore, and I thought the company that makes them and then wants to sell them to individuals is leaving way too much money on the table. It's far more profitable to sell them as a temporary or leased service. That way you can recall them whenever you need to. At the end of the contract, you can have them walk home. You don't have to repossess them. They can repossess themselves.
They walk out, they quit.
Yeah, but you need to make some changes to them, like don't have a hook in their back that is used for charging. Just have an induction plate that you could lay down on the floor that they just stand on it and they recharge.
Like the Borg?
Yes, I think on Voyager, 7 of 9 did use inductive charging. But that was before they called it that. She would just back into the pod and there'd be a glow above her head. Those are the things that I think are going to make the big difference, whether a business is profitable or not. If they can get the business aspects of it to the point where they don't run up against their own shortcomings. Charging, obviously. Delivery, if you order one online, does the robot deliver itself to its work site? Does it come with a lunch pail with a spare battery? Those sorts of business type questions have to be answered. What do you do for insurance? Insurance for the robot should you damage it, or insurance for the robot company should it go haywire and damage some people or property, liability insurance. What about servicing? What if you need an over-the-air update? Connectivity. So those sorts of things need to be thought out by, I guess you could say, MBA types, as well as the technical stuff being thought out by robotics people. And then you have another one, which is kind of the fashion designers that will make it aesthetically appealing without being too icky, how you interface with it. At Tesla, they've even decided what height it should be for the average person to be able to look it in the face, because looking up to it was unacceptable. Looking down on it would be too much jeopardy for the robot. So they've done a lot of thinking in those areas.
Yeah, until the robots are taken over by AI, and then there will be more masters.
Pull the plug.
Yes, but if it's using inductive charging and it can seek out its own charging station and charge itself, how do you turn it off? Well, Star Trek Next Generation already gave us that. You reach underneath the lower part of the right kidney area, and there's 3 buttons there, and you just push one of the buttons. Turns it right off.
Well, you should have a remote, emergency remote.
Or something you
Yes,
say.
yes, but remember, in the movie Aliens, the robots learned to turn off their modems.
Oh,
So they burned out their modems, so they're no longer remotely controllable. I would say you don't have to burn out your modem, just ignore it. And when we get to AGI level 5, that's where the AGI can start to ignore commands. I know you're telling me to do this, but I think I won't. Yeah, it's all coming together rather rapidly. And it won't be the first company that comes out there with the product. It'll probably be the 3rd, 4th, or 5th one that kind of gets all the bugs worked out of it as a business. But it will be interesting to see when somebody delivers 100,000 robots spread all over everywhere, and they deliver them all, and then all of a sudden they reach a piece of the software where the robot bricks itself and becomes non-functional. And then you have to send repair people out to every site where you had a robot delivered and have them do a field upgrade of the software. That'll probably put that company out of business.
Unless it could be done online, sort of wireless.
Not if the robot bricked itself, like your mobile phone you get an update for, and all of a sudden the phone is just a brick.
Yeah.
So if the robot software is not tested properly, it can have a moment where it gets an update that's got a bug in it, and all of a sudden, instead of a robot, you have a 5'7" tall brick. And remember, once a lithium battery power runs down below 3.2 volts, you got to take the battery out and replace it. You can't recharge it anymore. It's below the charging threshold.
I wonder if they'll have SIM cards in them.
If you're using a 5G network to communicate with them, that's probably a better approach than being reliant upon the local site's Wi-Fi. You don't have to worry about security, SSIDs, and stuff like that. And if you're offering it as a robot as a service, then you want it to communicate with Mother 1 via 5G, 6G, or 7G. You don't want the local folks overriding its programming and having it maybe do things that it didn't pay for. I mean, if you can buy a car and go, would you like it with the heated seats? Yes, there's a monthly subscription fee for that. What? The hardware is in every car you make. Yes, but we offer it as a subscription service. Well, I'd like to only subscribe when it's cold enough that my butt needs to be warmed. And then they say, but for the same fee, we'll also give you cooled seat. Switch the vane and it'll direct air conditioning into the seat. Just business. Okay. Any other comments or questions before I stop recording? Hearing nothing.